All right, so let's talk about what narcissists fear the most. Okay, so there are a lot of things that narcissists fear, and really what it comes down to is what they don't want you to know. So let's talk about the psychology of a narcissist. And when you are negotiating with them, it's really, really important to understand who it is that you're dealing with so that you can understand what motivates them. Really, what it comes down to is understanding what motivates them, understanding how to get them to shift so that you can understand how to create a strategy, so that you can understand how to create leverage. That's my whole SLAY strategy, right? Which is strategy, leverage, anticipating, and focusing on you, your case, and your position. And that's my whole SLAY methodology. And so when you're dealing with a narcissist, you have to understand that you're dealing with a person who has very little sense of self. They're actually very afraid people. They're worried that if they give anything that they're going to not have enough for themselves. It's scarcity mentality at its most extreme. Okay, they're like the hollow chocolate Easter bunnies. They look good on the outside, but there's nothing going on the inside. And the only thing that motivates them is this sense of narcissistic supply, that that they want this external validation. That's the only thing that motivates them. So what do they not want you to know? What do they fear the most? Well, number one, that they fear you more than you fear them. Okay. I mean, they're actually way more afraid of you than you are of them. And, it's like the wizard behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. They're like scared. And they put this big, huge thing up like the Wizard of Oz is like, the all great and powerful. But the truth of the matter is, they are way more afraid of you than you are of them. Right. So that's number one. Number two is they are truly the most scared little creatures on the planet. And that's why they do all the things that they do. I mean, I did a mediation with one of the most malignant narcissists ever. And he came crashing into the mediation and immediately started making unreasonable demands. Like there were these dogs that had been at his house, and the adult daughter had come over to the house and had taken the dogs. It wasn't even the wife that had taken the dogs. I was representing the wife. She didn't have the dogs. He starts off 8 o'clock in the morning. I want the dogs back. She doesn't have the dogs. I'm not mediating. I'm not doing anything until you have the dog. He doesn't want the dogs. He just wants to make a statement. He wants to demonstrate that he has control because he's afraid. Because he was afraid that this process was going to be a scary process for him. People who are not afraid, they don't do things like that. They don't act that way. So number two, they are the most scared little creatures on the planet. They really are. All right. Number three, it's what I've been saying. They have no sense of self. They're not standing in their power. They don't have that inner sense of feeling whole and complete, like that oak tree that just stands, that just moves with the wind, but really stays rooted and grounded. I mean, it's like if somebody calls you a name or whatever, and if you know that that's not what you are, it just bounces off of you. But they take it all on because they have no sense of self, and so all of their sense of anything of themselves comes from that external, comes from that sense of narcissistic supply. And that's how you create that leverage, because that's what exposes them. All right. And then that leads me to number four. Number four is what they fear the most: being exposed. And that's how you build leverage, by the way, is around exposing them. And I have a lot more of this in my video, by the way, called The One Secret That the Narcissist never want you to know, which you should definitely check out, but they definitely do not want to be exposed. All right. Number 5. What's another thing that they fear the most? That you're going to fight back. That's why they say things like, oh, I'm going to take you down and I'm going to do this to you and this is what's going to happen. And because they're afraid that you're actually going to do it. They are scared to death that you're actually going to fight back. Because if you do, they actually get unbalanced. They don't want you to fight back. Believe me, they don't. Number 6, they don't want you to not need them. They want you to need them. They want to be in control of you. Oh my goodness. I had a case one time where my client was divorcing his wife, but his mother was actually in control of the entire family. It was an Italian family, and the custody evaluator actually referred to her as like the godmother, sort of like the godfather, but she was like the godmother, where she controlled the entire family through the money and the power and all of that. And the fact that my client was successful in his own right and wanted to break away from the family was the cardinal sin. And the custody evaluator actually put that in the custody evaluation. Like, he no longer needed her. And she was a malignant narcissist. So that was one of the things that happened. Like, she didn't want him to not need her. So, number 7, one of the worst fears that they have, honestly, is that you no longer think that they're relevant. Think about some of the politicians, I mean, or some of the celebrities out there. I mean, they'll do anything to stay relevant sometimes, right? I mean, anything to stay in the news, anything to stay like you've seen, them do crazy things just to stay on the front page, just to have reporters talking about them because they want to stay relevant. They want to stay current. They want people to be noticing them. So that's number 7. Number 8 is that you no longer think that they matter. And number 9 is similar, which is that you've completely moved on. I mean, that is really what they fear the most. I mean, that's what really crushes them, is when you completely wipe them from the CPU of your life. That's the way I look at it, is like your life is a computer program and you've been able to go in and just go, oh, here they are, here they are, here they are, wipe, 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 wipe. You never existed in my life. Who are you again? What's your name? Like, where somebody can actually say their name and you feel nothing. I mean, some of the best emails and messages that we get on my team are the ones where people say, I did your program, I got the results that I wanted, and wow, the surprising results that I had is that my fear has disappeared. I am no longer afraid of this person. And if you are so ready to feel that you are no longer afraid of this person or whoever it is or any narcissist, give me an I'm ready in the comments right now, because that's what they fear the most. You're not afraid of them anymore. That you just moved on, that you're not moved by them. You're not intimidated by them. They're just a gnat flying around, you know? And really, that's the best thing for you, too, by the way, because when you can get to that point, when you can get to the point where you have overcome everything that you needed to overcome with any kind of a toxic personality in your life, whether it's in your business life or your personal life, and you've gotten to a point where you've been able to not feel intimidated when you walk into a room, where you feel powerful and persuasive and you feel whole and complete, and you feel like you are living into the person that you're meant to be, that you're meant to be here. That living into your power. That's being who you're truly meant to be. You are a person, a soul who is having a human experience, who was meant to be here, who's meant to shine. You're not meant to be small. And that is when you are truly free. And that is what the narcissist fears the most, that you're living in your power and truly free. Okay, so things have turned red hot. You are under massive attack. They're triggering you because that's what they want to do. They want to make sure that you're triggered. They want to destabilize you. They want you to feel paralyzed. They want you to feel powerless. That's their goal. It's not just, by the way, it's not just because they want to win. Yes, they want to win, but there's kind of like this other piece of it, because if they win, then it's over. And they don't necessarily want it to be over, because then the fun is over for them. Because part of the fun is the intimidation factor. Part of the fun is watching you squirm. Part of the fun is like, it's kind of like that nasty kid who just like takes the earthworm and like wants to pick at it and watch it kind of squirm, put pins in it and see what happens to it. Like that's kind of the fun of it for them. It's almost like an experiment. They enjoy it. So how do you look fearless when they're like enjoying that? So I've come up with this acronym. It's called Cool Words, and it's to help you remember what to do when they are trying to stick it to you. Because a lot of times, by the way, they know you, especially if it's in a divorce situation or a business partner dissolution or something where they've really gotten to know you well over the course of many years. They know what your Achilles heels are. They know how to get to you. They know exactly what is going to needle you. So, cool words. C. C stands for chill out, take a break. First thing you can do is just walk away. Say, I need a moment. I need to walk outside. I need to take a breath. Go throw some cold water on your face. Go to the restroom. Take some fresh air in. Just get away from the intensity of the room. Just doing that for a few minutes will make a huge difference. You have the right to just walk away for a second, change it up a little bit, especially if there's a mediator. If you happen to be in a mediation setting, maybe even say, I want to talk to just the mediator for a second, or maybe have just the lawyers talk, or maybe ask to have a different dynamic as far as who's talking to whom. Even just that can kind of cool the temperatures down in the room for a second. Okay, so that's C. That's the first C. The next letter is O for cool words. All right. So O. O stands for observe their behavior. You're just observing their behavior verbally to them, without emotion and without judgment. So you say to them something like this: I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry. You might even ask them, what's making you angry right now? Get them to verbalize it. So you're just observing. You're observing their behavior to them. You're just kind of taking yourself out of it by doing that. And you're asking them to explain their behavior to you without emotion, without defensiveness, without judgment. You're not getting down into it with them by doing that. So that's the first O. The second O, we're working through the word cool here. The second O is observing the situation as if you're a bystander. So the first O is you're observing their behavior to them. The second O is you're observing the situation as if you're a bystander. So this is where you're actually taking yourself out of the entire situation as if you're not even part of it. It's almost like watching a 2-year-old having a tantrum on the floor. They're screaming, they're yelling. You don't feel like you need to get down on the floor and scream and yell, right? You usually just watch them. This is almost helpful, like as if you're watching a football game, or you're watching a wrestling match, or you're a hockey game and you're seeing like those guys, like they start fighting, right? Because it helps you to start to not take things as personally. Because remember, the way people treat other people is always a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves. Highly recommend the book, The 4 Agreements. One of the 4 agreements that you make with yourself is you never take anything personally, because the way people treat other people is always a reflection of the way they feel about themselves. Observing the situation as if you're a bystander is something actually that Judge Lynn Toller also recommended when I interviewed her, and you can definitely check out my interview with her on this channel as well, and we'll make sure we have a link to that here as well. So definitely check that out. The next letter is L. We're working through the word cool. So we've done COO, now we're doing L. L is let it go by you. You're just literally watching the words that they fling toward you just go by you. I just think of it as like when I was a kid and I used to play dodgeball, like they would make us, not willingly, by the way. Hated that game. But when they would make us play that game in PE, they called it PE, and they forced us to line up against the wall. Do they still make kids play that game? Horrible game. They force you to line up against the wall, and the boys would fling the ball at you as hard as possible. And you would like try to dodge the ball. Anyway, so you just kind of like watch the words go by you just like that. Like you just go past them. The words go by you, and there they go. And you're just observing them go by you, and they don't touch you. And that's what you're going to have them do. You're just letting them go by you. That's L. All right. And then words. This is my favorite part of this. You use mantras, words, power words to keep you grounded. And so what you do is you actually have power words in front of you. So they could be words like power, strength, leverage, resilience, confidence, or control, whatever it is. And you just have 1 or 2 of them right in front of you just to remind you of who you are, what you're doing there. And you don't even have to have the whole word written out. You can just write P for power. Something that's going to keep you grounded, keep you feeling strong. It could be just a symbol, something that when you look at it, it's going to remind you of that word. In the book, Think and Grow Rich, which I also recommend, Napoleon Hill talks about that power of auto-suggestion, which is a way for you to reprogram your brain and your neuronal patterns. And so by having these words there, something that is in the room with you when you're in that situation, that high emotion, that tense and intensive situation, it's a way for you to remind yourself who you are, and you're going to be less likely to be triggered that way. It's reminding you that you're badass. You're badass. And that badass self of yours is going to stay in that room. And it ain't going to go anywhere when you're under attack, so that you can remain looking fearless. So now let's talk about leverage. What is it? And how do you get it? And when do you use it? And when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're going to need it, believe me, because a narcissist does have a plan, believe it or not, and that plan is to take you down. It's to smear you. It's to use everything they possibly can against you. Everything you do and say will be used against you, just like as if you were being arrested, but so much worse. So if you don't have leverage as part of your overall strategy, you will be sunk. You're going to be like put to sea in shark-infested waters with no oars to help you and nothing to save you. You will go down. You're going to constantly feel like you're on the defensive rather than finally feeling like you can go on the offensive for a change. So if you're looking at negotiating with a narcissist, whether it's in a divorce situation or a business partner setting or anything like that, leverage is the one thing that you are absolutely going to need to have in order to gain an advantage over them. And the truth of the matter is that even for people who say, I don't want to fight, and as a divorce attorney, I've been a divorce attorney for over 20 years, I can tell you that every single person who comes through the doors of my office says, I don't want to fight. Nobody wants to fight because nobody wants to spend thousands of dollars with the divorce attorney. Fighting means spending money if you have an attorney engaged, even if you're in a business partner setting and you're dealing with an attorney, fighting means spending money because attorneys bill on time for the most part. So every single person says, I don't want to fight. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't want to fight, and you're dealing with a narcissist on the other side, then you have to have leverage just to get back to the middle, just to get back to what's fair. The problem is that if you are a reasonable person, then you're just thinking in reasonable terms. Well, let's just come up with an agreement. Let's just think of how we can settle this in a way that's fair for everybody. I don't want to take this person for all they're worth. I just want what is fair or equitable. I just want to be done with this thing. I just want to move on with my life. That's the way you, reasonable person, are thinking. That is not the way narcissists think, because to them, the fight, the making you squirm, the jerking you around is actually part of how they get narcissistic supply. They enjoy that. So you are not on the same page from the beginning. Neither of you are thinking in the same terms. One of you is thinking, let's just get this done. The other one is thinking, let's jerk this person around. So you can't come to this realization of, oh, let's just resolve this thing, amicably. It's not going to happen if you're truly dealing with a narcissist. Remember that narcissists have no inner sense of value. All of their value comes from the external. So they need an endless amount of supply in order for them to feel valuable. And supply, while it can come in the form of money and compliments and respect and adulation, it also, for them, comes in the form of making you squirm, jerking you around, getting their way, beating you, winning, but not winning in the same way that you think of as winning. Winning to them is jerking you around. That's a win. It's not even that they necessarily want the end result the same way that you may. So if you want to get anywhere with a narcissist, even though you don't want to fight, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but in order to get where you want to go, you are going to have to create leverage. And it has to be part of an overall strategy. And I talk so much more in depth on this in my SLAY program. And SLAY stands for having strategy. You have to have a super strong strategy. And then leverage, which is what I'm talking about here. And then anticipating what the narcissist is going to do and being 2 steps ahead of them, and then focusing on you and your case. So you do have to have an overall strategy. What's your long game? What's your vision? What's your end result? Where do you want to go? Sometimes when you've been so traumatized by a narcissist for so long, it can almost seem foreign to you to think in terms of, where am I going with this? I can actually maybe be on the offensive. Maybe I could actually win this thing or get where I want to go. what do I want? It's really hard sometimes to think in those terms because you've been beaten down for so long and you've been told that you're selfish, or you've been told that there's something wrong with you, or you've been told that, you know, you don't deserve to have anything. And so you start to believe that stuff. But that, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. You deserve to have a fair result. You deserve to have whatever it is that you want, that's you're entitled to under the law. And sometimes you can even get people to settle for more than what you're entitled to under the law, depending on if you have enough leverage or not. But leverage is that thing that's going to motivate and inspire and incentivize the narcissist to want to come to the table with you. And it could be in the form of all different kinds of things. I mean, it could be people that you get to testify against them. It could be information that they don't want out there. It could be a chart of their web of lies. It could be all kinds of different things. The thing is that leverage isn't only one thing. You've got to have a lot of it, and it's got to be in multiple different forms, because you're basically building an invisible fence around the narcissist while they're not looking, so that by the time they look up, when you're sitting in mediation or whatever, they realize that they are surrounded by all sides and there's no way they're getting out unless they sign an agreement with you. And that's what you're doing with leverage. If you want to know more about negotiating with a narcissist, check out my video on negotiating with a narcissist. I also have a video on divorce mediation with a narcissist, and you're going to want to check that one out as well. And if you're ready to do this, I want to see a let's do this in the comments. When you're looking at different types of leverage, what you want to be looking at is anything that's going to interrupt their supply. That's going to be the key, because narcissists just want one thing. They just want that one prize. There's the only one thing that motivates them. As human beings who are not narcissistic, there's lots of different things that motivate us and incentivize us to do the things that we do. With narcissists, it's just the one thing. It's supply. And it can be in the form of good things like money and prestige and compliments and adulation and respect. And it can be in the form of bad things too, such as devaluing, degrading, and, you know, making you feel like a piece of crap, jerking you around, controlling the process. And in a court setting, it looks like ignoring court orders, refusing to give discovery, which we call obstruction. It could be in the form of smear campaigns, lying about things that you do, using the court system as their sword, using your children as pawns, things like that. So that's their plan. And if you don't have a plan, then they will take you down. So leverage is that thing that you're pushing against them. It's you're leveraging your position in a way against them, and it's going to be in the form of their supply. And the one thing that I really want you to remember is this. That is that they get supply from jerking you around. So how you are going to get your case settled is by threatening a source of supply to them that's actually more important for them to keep than the leverage or the supply that they get from jerking you around. In other words, is it more important for them to not be exposed that they have a sexually transmitted disease? Is it more important for them to look good in the community or in front of the judge or to hold on to their money or something like that? Is that in the long run going to be more important to them than the supply and the satisfaction that they get from jerking you around? Or maybe it's that they have a new set of supply that's better for them and they want to move on and they just want you to sign. That's a good piece of leverage that you would have too. So figuring out what source of supply you could potentially threaten to take away from them will really very much help your situation. So
Inside of my program, I give like 30 different examples of leverage. There's no one thing that's leverage for every single narcissist, other than the fact that it's definitely going to be tied into their supply source.
When you become fearless against narcissists, when you no longer have that fear against narcissists, I know what it's like. And what happens when you no longer have fear against narcissists? Well, there's so many different things that happen when that power dynamic shifts. And I've seen it happen so many times, but it's a gradual process, okay? Because, they're in it for the supply. People think they're in it to win it. They're not in it to win it. They're in it for the supply. They're only in it for the supply. And they're in it for many different forms of supply. And one of the things that I have to explain to people a lot of times is that when you go into the discard phase of the relationship, they really actually shift the form of supply that they've been getting from you. Okay, so you understand, right, that there have been the different phases of the relationship. They start off with the whole love bombing thing, that charm, which is all really just to get that supply out of you in the first place. They want to get as quickly as possible to the next phase so that they can start getting the supply out of you as fast as possible. And so as fast as possible, they want to get to the next phase, which is the devalue phase. But it's really more to start exerting control over you because they want to start showing you that they're powerful, and they want to start letting you know that they're in control of you. How they do that is devaluing you in some ways and letting you know that you are under their thumb. And they also are testing you in that devaluing phase. Okay. So part of the ghosting and the devaluing and all of that is to test you to see how you react when they do those kinds of things. Are you going to be a good source of supply for them? So then, when you start to pull away, they're coming back just, oh, no, I don't want you to go because I need you. Leaving them is actually the worst thing that you could possibly do. They have a very, very, very fragile ego. You're really there to serve that need for supply for them. So then when you enter into that discard phase and you actually do start to want to leave them, they want you to be afraid of them. They want you to fear them. And so then when you do start to leave them, they're afraid of that. They don't want you to leave them because they want you to be afraid of them. They want you to fear them. So now it happened. You've been fully conditioned. So you start to leave them. They go into their tantrum phase. Everything that they have done to control you throughout the relationship, they're going to get worse on. They're going to start to collapse, go crazy. And if you want to know more about what happens when the narcissist starts to collapse, you can definitely check out my video on the narcissist collapse. Not pretty. Definitely not pretty. So they start going crazy. They don't want you to leave. So when you do start to leave, now, they start grasping. They go into all their phases of, whatever they were doing in the first place. Now, when you do start to leave, they're going crazy, right? So smear campaigns, flying monkeys, all of that. And then in the middle of a divorce, by the way, it's the worst. Depending on what kind of narcissist you're dealing with, it could be covert, malignant, grandiose, but they're not providing documents. They're using the court system as a sword. They might only provide a certain amount of documents. They're hiding money. They might be manipulating text messages, manipulating evidence. They might be tampering with witnesses, evidence, lying to the court system, using the children, as pawns in the whole thing, suddenly interested in having the children half the time, trying to get the children to be against you. I mean, whatever it is that they need to do, right? Now you finally are getting past all of that and you start to see through them and you're on the other side of that and you start to realize how strong you actually are and you start to really realize how pathetic they actually are, and you start to realize how strong you actually are. You start to realize that you are actually the stronger one, and you've gotten on the other side of seeing how you've actually been able to slay this beast. You will be so shocked at how they behave. They're going to be avoiding you. They don't want to go anywhere near you. And by the way, they do trade forms of supply. I started to mention that. So whatever form of supply they were getting from you in the relationship, whether it was money, services, sex, you were doing stuff for them, they trade that during the discard phase for manipulating you, making you crazy. People think they just want to win. They don't just want to necessarily win, because they trade that for driving you absolutely insane. And that's why these cases never settle, because they love jerking you around. But when you don't fear them anymore, that's when they don't actually want to have anything more to do with you, because you're no longer a good source of supply. And by the way, that's the type of person that the narcissist most respects, the person who doesn't fear them. So I want you to write in the comments right now, no fear, because that's your goal. That's your goal. Your goal is no fear. So for those of you who are ready to go there, I want you to subscribe to this channel right now. Subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't done that already. And make sure that you like this video and share it for others who need this content and need this empowerment, because it is time that we all have no fear against narcissists, right?
So let's talk about that magic bullet. When you are dealing with a narcissist in a negotiation setting, it feels impossible, doesn't it? Like, doesn't it feel like, oh my God, why do they always win? Why do they always get away with things? So one thing I do want to say about getting away with things is, when you say that, number one, it kind of like assumes, by the way, that there's sort of like this magic person or power that should be overseeing everything. And the only person that has any power over somebody is a judge. That's the only person who has the power to say, you are ordered to do this, and if you don't do this, something bad is going to happen to you. Lawyers don't have that power. Police don't really have that power. Police can arrest people, but even once they're arrested, they end up having to end up in court, and then a judge will decide what happens to them. So regardless of whatever the situation is, the only people who have power to order people to do things are judges. That's it. No one else. And so the power that lawyers have is in getting people in front of judges and persuading judges that the law says that this is what should happen to this person, and asking the judge to render that order. And then judges take all the information together, they listen to the facts, they the evidence, they gather all the stuff, they take it under consideration once it's submitted to them, and they render an order. And then whatever the order says, the order says. And at that point, people have the ability to appeal it, or ask it to be set aside, or ask for a rehearing or a reconsideration or whatever. But that's what happens. So when you say, like, oh, how are they getting away with it? It really is just because they kind of can, until you get it in front of the judge and get the judge to say this is what should happen. Or you can use your magic bullet. And the magic bullet is your leverage. And how do you create that leverage? Well, let's talk about that. So when you are dealing with a narcissist, they are driven by one thing. Come on, you know what it is. Say it with me. Yup. Narcissistic supply. That's what they're dealing with. That's the only thing they care about. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply and leverage, you can definitely check out my video on creating leverage. But I'm going to talk more about that here too. Now, I also have a video on narcissistic supply. You should check that out. Narcissistic supply is what feeds that narcissist. It is the only thing they care about. They are literally on the hunt, constantly praying. And I don't mean this kind of praying. I don't mean the one with the A. I meant the one with the E. Like, they're predators. They need to go after you. Whoever it is, whoever's near them, they need to suck as much narcissistic supply from every person and every event that they possibly can. They have no inner sense of value. Zero. So therefore, all of it has to come from the external for them. They're like slapping it on like lacquer, you know, and they are trying to like pretend that they are this big person on campus, the VIP, the most important, because they don't feel any sense of value on the inside. So it all has to come from the outside. And so that's what narcissistic supply is. That's the key. That's the magic bullet. That's where you have to go if you want to create leverage. All right. So in my SLAY program, I talk about leverage. I talk about developing a super strong strategy, which is what S stands for. I talk about creating invincible leverage, which is what your L is. Anticipating how the narcissist is going to behave and staying 2 steps ahead of them and staying, hey, instead of being behind all the time, being ahead. That's the A. And Y is focusing on you, your case, your position. So important. You don't want to be constantly on the defensive. You want to be on the offensive. Remember, a football team that only has a great defense but no offense means no one's scoring any points, right? So you have to be the one scoring the points. And how you do that is going on the offensive, creating that strategy, creating that leverage, creating that magic bullet. And if you want that magic bullet in your negotiations, I want to see magic bullet in the comments right now. So how do you do that? So one of the things that you've got to understand when it comes to leverage with a narcissist is that there are hierarchies of supply when it comes to narcissists. Some narcissists are driven by certain things. Some narcissists are driven by other things. But there's always going to be a hierarchy of it. Certain forms of supply are definitely going to be worth more to them than other forms of supply. Certainly how they look, their reputation, all of those things are always going to be high levels of supply. And as well as other forms of supply that mean more to them, such as somebody who's more prestigious, or a friendship with somebody who's more powerful, something like that. Those things mean a lot to the narcissist, and they'll protect those things at any cost. So the other forms of supply that they get are, you know, the garden variety stuff that they do all the time, you know, like making you miserable by ignoring court orders, ignoring the terms of a contract, passive aggressive stuff like, you ask them to do something, or they even volunteer to do something, and then they don't do it. And then when you ask them to, how come you didn't do this thing? Then they act like you are nagging them and you're a pain in the neck. Or they have 50,000 excuses. Narcissists are great at projection. And if you want to fight back against narcissistic projection, you should definitely check out my video on narcissistic projection. But that's what you're going to get, because they get supply from that. Narcissists love making you miserable, seeing you squirm, manipulating you, putting fear in you, making you feel out of control. They love that. So, and by the way, they lose control sometimes too. And if they do, then they do end up collapsing. And if you want to know more about what happens when a narcissist collapses, you should definitely check out my video on what happens when a narcissist collapses. But spoiler alert, it ain't pretty. All right, I'll just say that right now. It ain't pretty, but it does happen. And when you are negotiating with them, you want to get them to a point where they're nervous that their supply source, the one that means more to them to retain, is going to be threatened in some way. Now, you don't actually take it away. That's the key. Unless you have to. You have to be ready to go forward with your threats, by the way. You have to be ready to do that. But the sweet spot is in threatening that source where they feel that you really are going to go forward with what it is that you're saying you're going to do. And then they'll have to make a choice at that point. They'll have to make a choice on letting go of the supply that they get from you in order to keep the supply that means more to them. So that's the magic bullet right there. That's the sweet spot. It's always in threatening some form of narcissistic supply. They don't want to have to let go of any form of supply. So giving up the supply that they get from jerking you around and making you miserable is not going to be easy. They want to hold on to it all. They're like hoarders. I need this supply and I need that supply. I need this supply. They need it all. It's like they're like, children or toddlers that have to keep it all as much as possible. But if they're driven to the brink, they will let go of the supply that they get from making you miserable if they have to. And that's what you will be creating in your slay methodology. When you figure out how to do all of that together, that's when you are ready to slay your negotiation.
Hey there, I'm Rebecca Zung, and I'm an attorney and I help people negotiate with narcissists. And if you want a narcissist respect, I'm going to give you 8 ways to get it. But there are things that you've got to stop doing if you want a narcissist respect. Number 1, you've got to stop doing things for them that they can easily do for themselves. You've got to stop enabling them. I know that it's hard because, especially with the fear factor, if you're dealing with a narcissist, they expect things. You've been conditioned by them. If you've been in a longer term relationship with them, they have been getting a certain amount of what we call narcissistic supply from you, and they expect you to do things for them. I mean, you're kind of sometimes like their janitor in a lot of ways. They expect you to be a certain person for them in this relationship. And even if you resent it, even if you don't want to do certain things for them, they kind of have set things up in a certain way. You kind of have to do certain things for them. as you think. But if you enable that behavior, then they no longer respect you. You've got to stop doing things for them that they can easily do for themselves. What happens with narcissists a lot of times is that everything is kind of optional for them, and you don't get that. You don't get everything is optional for you, but everything is kind of optional for them. You've got to stop that if you want them to respect you. And they respect people that they have to, kind of work for. You've got to stop doing things for them that they can easily do for themselves. Let them know, no, I'm not doing that anymore. You have to do that. You have the ability. So stop enabling them. So that's number one. And I'm going to give you 7 more. And as we work up, it's going to get even harder and harder. You're kind of like dealing with a toddler. You know how with toddlers, they have tantrums, and with toddlers, they have to feel like they have to scream louder, scream longer, and they're kind of like giving the parents sort of the side eye as they're screaming, going, are they watching? Are they watching? Because if they're watching, they're seeing if they're going to get that thing that they want as they have the tantrum. Maybe I just need to kick my legs this time. Maybe I just need to throw things this time, a little bit more of a tantrum. That's what's happening. But if they don't get what they want, then they actually start to respect the parents. That's what you're doing. Okay. Stop doing things for them that they can easily do for themselves. That's number one. Number 2 is you've got to stop seeking validation from them. Stop putting yourself down. Stop going, oh yeah, I'm not very good at that. I know I'm not really all that smart, or stop caring what they think of you. Stop looking for their opinion on things. Just go, you know what? I can do things on my own. I don't need your validation. I don't need you to believe in me. I don't need you to think that what I'm doing is a good idea. I don't need you to think that I'm smart or I'm attractive or that I am good at what I do. A lot of times I've seen women especially want to start a business or start something new or, whatever it is. And, whoever it is that's their significant other will say, oh, that's a stupid idea, or you're not very good at that. And, in fact, I actually was just having a conversation with somebody recently who just said to me that, she had been an actress or something like that. And her significant other said, you're not a very good actress. But, here's something that's interesting. She ended up becoming a writer instead because this person said to her, you're not a very good actress. So she ended up doing writing, and she ended up winning all sorts of awards because this person said that she wasn't a good actress, and she ended up becoming an amazing writer and winning all these awards. But you know what? She kind of got the better of him. But she really needed to just not listen to the guy anyway, because here's the thing. People only treat people the way they feel about themselves, and narcissists don't like themselves, and that's why they treat people poorly. If somebody feels good about themselves, then they treat people well. If somebody feels poorly about themselves, then they treat people poorly, so you can't take it personally. So stop seeking validation from them. Stop putting yourself down. Stop caring what narcissists think about you. They actually respect people who don't care what they think about them. Okay. So if you want the narcissist respect, stop thinking what they care about you. By the way, if you're trying to negotiate with a narcissist, they're not going to want to negotiate or communicate or whatever with somebody who's like constantly putting themselves down. They're going to want to try to negotiate with somebody that they respect. So the more you start laying this foundation now, better it's going to be for you as you go through this process. And by the way, I do have a free negotiation worksheet for you at crushmydeal.com, which you should definitely get. So it's a free 15-page ebook, and it will definitely help you. And I upload brand new videos here on this channel every single day. And you should definitely subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell if you haven't done that already too. All right. So the other thing that you should do, the next thing, the third thing, and we've got 8 things here for you, is stop trying to be someone that you're not. One of the things that scares a narcissist more than anything is authenticity, because they are so fake all the time that you being an authentic person is, something that really throws them off. They don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to deal with authenticity, genuineness, you being who you are, you standing up for yourself, you respecting yourself, you loving yourself. Those are all qualities that they don't have. And, they feel empty inside. So you being who you are, standing in your power, is something that they will totally respect. So stop trying to be someone that you're not. Number 4, stop making excuses for their bad behavior. Just stop doing that, because you are actually ignoring their red flags. Then you're actually defending their red flags when you do that. So stop making excuses for their bad behavior. Stop defending them to others. When you say things to other people like they had a bad childhood, they had a stressful week, they've had a stressful year, they are just making fun of me because that's, a joke that we have between each other. It's okay if they put me down, because that's our joke. That's not okay. Stop making excuses for their bad behavior, because that doesn't make them respect you. That allows them a pass for their disrespectful behavior. Number 5, stop trying to control them. Leave them be. They're never going to be controlled. So you need to stop trying to control them. You need to control yourself. You need to leave them on their path. Don't allow them to control you, but you also need to stop trying to control them. You need to be in your path, in your world, and be independent, because that will allow you the freedom to start shifting that dynamic, right? Step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. That's what I say all the time, right? If you're going to start pivoting, you're going to start shifting that dynamic. You want to start being on the offensive. You want to start to slay, which is my slay methodology: strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. Then that's what you have to do. All right. All right. Number 6, stop letting them manipulate you emotionally, which is stop taking that bait. Stop taking everything they say or do personally. As I said, people who hurt people, who are hurt people. So when you say things like, they make me feel bad, you are making yourself out to be a victim, because you are in that space of allowing them that power to say they get to dictate how I feel, and don't give them that power. Okay. Number 7, stop giving them your time and your energy if they're not worth it, because they're not. Don't try to change them. Don't say that, you can love them back to health, or you can, you don't need so much love. I've actually heard people say that, I didn't get that much love as a child, so I don't need that much anyway. And I have all the love to give, and I will be able to give them everything. You are going to just end up depleted What happens with narcissists is they have this black hole inside of them. It can never be filled. They're like starving, gasping for breath, desperate for air. It's scarcity mentality to the extreme. And they're in survival mode all the time. And they have this black hole that can never be filled, and they want you to fill it. And while you might want to fill it too, it can never be filled. And so you're left feeling totally and utterly depleted, yet they're still starving. And so you're just exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And they're just like energy vampires, soul vampires, and it's not worth it. You'll never, ever, ever be able to satisfy that, and you'll never, ever, ever have your needs met. Ever. And you're so much worth so much more than that. And your soul knows it too. And it's in there screaming to get out. So number 8 is, if you really want a narcissist respect, this is going to be the hardest thing to do, but it's the most important. This is the most important step. You've got to walk away and never look back. So I want you to put in the comments right now, just walk away. Just walk away.
Okay, so you're dealing with that narcissist. They're driving you crazy. They're driving you insane. They're making you feel miserable, powerless, paralyzed. They enjoy watching you sweat. They enjoy making your life miserable. What can you do to stop them right in their tracks? It's so hard sometimes because you feel like right in your face, they do whatever they can to trigger you. They go out of their way to carefully and perfectly curate things to say to you so that you are feeling crazy or that you're triggered. Back in the video that I did, Narcissists Care a Lot, you can definitely check that out.
I am a lioness.
I talked about that show, I Care a Lot, with Rosamund Pike. It was such a perfect example of what happens when you get triggered. So she was sitting there talking to this older woman in the nursing home, and she saw the camera there. She knew that she was going to be able to trigger this woman. So she sat there and she said things over and over and over again to her, like, "You're an old woman, you're crazy, you're this, you're that." And the old woman got so triggered that she stood up and actually started choking her. And then what did the narcissist do? She went right into court and used it. Look, she's crazy. And that's what often happens when you're dealing with narcissists in a negotiation setting. They goad you and trigger you so much that you end up making mistakes. You end up doing things that now you have to undo, and you dig your own hole more because they've triggered you. And that's what they want to do. Dealing with a narcissist is like getting arrested. Have you ever heard that one? Yeah, it's whatever you do or say is definitely going to be used against you. So you got to be really, really careful about not being triggered. And in that video that I just referenced, Care a Lot, or Narcissists Care a Lot, that I did, I have a whole lot of ideas for you on not getting triggered. So definitely check that out. Okay, so dealing with a narcissist, and you really, really want to make sure that you're not triggered, and you want to shut them down. You want to stop them in their tracks. You want to disarm them. So how do you go ahead and do that? So the very first way that you can do that, the first thing that you can say is, "You're right." Because now you're basically just taking away their power. You know, it's sort of like when you push against something, when you push against your hand and the other person is pushing, but then you let go and then the other hand just flies to the side. That's what happens. So you just say, "You're right. You know, you're right. I'm worthless. You're right. I'm terrible. You're right. I'm the one that caused all the problems. You're right this, you're right that." whatever. And, then they might start to get mad, like, oh, now you're patronizing me or this, that, and the other. They're going to try to keep you getting into the mud with them. But just say, no, I really think you're right. Yep. So that's definitely one way that you can just start to, shut them down a little bit. The next thing that you can do is you can say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I upset you. I'm sorry it seems to be that you're very angry. I'm sorry that we're having issues. I'm sorry that there are words between us. I'm sorry I didn't say the right thing. Whatever you want to say, you don't necessarily have to say, I'm sorry, like there's something wrong with you, but you could even say, I'm sorry that you're so upset. You could even like observe that to them. Like, I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry. Just observe them. So another thing that you can do is just, without emotion or without any kind of issues, just, without feeling triggered, just say, I don't want to have this argument anymore. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to allow you to disrespect me. I can have this conversation with you when you are ready to have a conversation that is rational. So that's the next thing that you can say is, I don't want to argue with you, or I'm not going to argue with you. Okay? So another thing that you can do is say something to them like, I can see where you might think that. I mean, even if you don't think that, well, I can see that. Or I can see that that's your perception, or I can accept that that's your perception of me. You're not admitting to anything at that point. You're just saying, I can see that. Okay, fine. So that's another way that you can do it. And if you are so ready to stop them in their tracks, give me a stop them in their tracks in the comments right now. Okay, so the next thing that you can say to them to shut them down is thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. You don't have to say, I agree with you, you're right. You don't even have to say any of those other things. You can just say thank you. Because what are they going to say to thank you, right? I mean, they'll be like, thank you for what? They'll try to continue to get you down in the mud with them, right? But then you're just both rolling around in mud, neither of you are getting anywhere with that. So by staying away from being triggered like that and just, making observations, I always say just the facts, ma'am, or sir, never explain, justify, or overshare. Don't try to get, defensive. Don't try to get them to see the error of their ways. They're never going to come to any of that. So you might as well give up on that idea, all right? So what's the last one leading up to the drum roll of the last one? It is say nothing. Just say nothing at all. Don't respond. Just walk away. Go gray rock. Stick to your boundaries. Walk away from them. And by the way, if you want to know what the difference is between ghosting, silent treatment, and having boundaries, check out my video on that topic as well. But the last thing you can do is just say nothing at all. Just walk away and just say, I'm having my life, namaste and walk away. That's one of my favorite little sayings, is namaste and walk away. Wish you well, but I wish you well over there. Like that's what I say about the narcissists that were in my life. I wish them well, but I wish them well over there, away from me, not in my space anymore. I'm done with that.
Let's talk today about how to checkmate that narcissist. Especially when you're negotiating with them, you really want to try to grab the edge. You really want to try to change it around. I kind of often think about it as like you're playing tug of war. And, where is that rope, right? Is it in the middle or is it kind of going back and forth? Or are you just feeling like, you're about to lose over here. You're about to fall on the ground because they've got you pulled so far, right? Or I guess they would be the one falling on the ground, but you're the one who's about to fall on the ground, the other in their turf, right? Because you just feel like you just can't get on top of it. You can't seem to figure out how to get it going in the other direction. And I know a lot of times you do feel like you are constantly on the defensive. You feel like you're constantly like that turtle on the back of your shell and they've got their foot on you, right? And your arms and legs are up in the air. But there is definitely a way to shift that power dynamic so that you finally feel like you're the one who is in control. So, the first thing that you can do, and we've talked about this before, but it's really, really important that you understand that you need to put super strong boundaries into place. I've had to deal with a couple of narcissists in my own life. It has been super toxic. It was super horrible. It was very traumatic. It took over my brain. It took over my life. And my narcissists weren't even as a husband. It was a business partner and a family member. So, but it's still like absolutely horrible. I mean, I'm actually an empath at heart. And, so I was constantly feeling every single piece of it. And I obsess over it and I ruminate over it. And it just is so horrible. So, developing those super strong boundaries is a really good way to kind of get going with it and start to take that toxicity away from you so that you can start to heal and you can start to get your brain back, because it's almost like deprogramming, like you've been programmed and traumatized by these people so much. So how do you do that? How do you put strong boundaries into place? Well, one of them is definitely going to be not engaging with them. I mean, at least to the extent that you can. So at least minimal engagement, keep your conversations with them brief, keep them on topic, the things that you actually need to talk to them about. So that's definitely one way you can have strong boundaries. Another way you can have strong boundaries is by setting parameters. Okay, we'll talk, but we're going to talk about this. This is the topic. We're not going to talk about anything else other than that. One of the things that I also did that, to set boundaries that I found really effective is blocking these people on social media so that you're not constantly looking at them, especially if you know that they're trying to post stuff that's going to trigger you or try to show you how wonderful their life is, or that they've moved on, or they have somebody else, or they've got other things going on in their business and you're not included in that. These bullying tactics, just block them. Just block them all. Block them so that you don't have to look at it, so that they're not looking at your stuff and you can just start to move on with your life. The other way that you can have really super strong boundaries is to find one form of communication. And email is definitely best. I would definitely say that it's the easiest form of communication that potentially down the road could be used as a trial exhibit if you need to. Text messages tend to be long running things, and sometimes there's not always a time and date stamp, and sometimes the entire conversation's not always included there. So, I would definitely say email is optimum. The next thing that you can do to checkmate that narcissist and try to shut them down is using phrases that shut them down. One of the things that you can say is something like, I agree that's what you think. I agree that that's how you feel. You're not agreeing with anything when you say that, but you're making them think you're agreeing with something, right? Another way to do that is, I understand that that's your perception. I understand that that's your position. I understand your, thoughts on this. And again, you're not really doing anything by saying that, but you're just kind of disarming them. It takes them off their game. It makes them wobble. They're like, oh, what are they saying? And you're sort of lulling them into thinking that you're kind of going along with them. And then the next one is, I'm sorry, that's what you think. I'm sorry, that's your perception. I'm sorry, that's your position. I'm sorry, that's how you feel. I'm sorry that we're in this situation. These are all phrases that you can use to shut them down. And I have a lot more on these in my phrases to shut down narcissists. So definitely check that out. All right. So next thing that you can do is control your emotions. By controlling your emotions, you're starting to break free of them. You're starting to not allow them to trigger you anymore. And by the way, if you are so ready to break free from narcissists at all in your life, give me a break free in the comments below. All right. So the next, in controlling your emotions, one of the ways that you can do it is kind of see it as a game. I interviewed Judge Lynn Toller, and you can definitely check out that video if you'd like. But one of the things that she said was see it as a game, kind of make it fun. Not that it is a game, not that it's like not a serious situation, but kind of getting yourself psyched into, not feeling so like this is life or death all the time. You sort of like watch the words go by you, or sort of watch them as if they're 2-year-olds having a tantrum on the floor. Because the more that you can do this, the more that you can disengage, the less power they're going to have over you in the negotiations, the less chance you'll have to be triggered, and the more power you'll have in your own right, and the more firm that you will feel in your position, and you'll start to build your confidence in the whole thing. And your mindset is so important. The more confident you feel, the better that you will be. Remember, the people will think what you tell them to think. So you want them to believe that you are strong, you are powerful, and that you are going to win this thing. All right. So, and then the last thing that you can do to checkmate a narcissist is to go no contact completely. The way I look at it is like erase them from the CPU, like they never existed in your life. You were doing fine before they came along. You can do fine when they're gone, just like as if they didn't even exist. So, to the extent that you possibly can. Obviously, if you're co-parenting with a narcissist, you're still gonna have to see their face, but maybe not. Maybe you can just, parallel parent and, use some kind of parenting app and not even have to see them. But, or if it's a family member or whatever, you just try to keep it as brief as possible and go back to some of the other things I said. But if you can go no contact completely, that's the plum. That's the best way to do it. That is for sure. That is what definitely helped me. And I know it will definitely help you too. 6 ways to scare a narcissist out of your life. It's time to scare a narcissist out of your life. They usually have you running scared, right? Because that's what they want to do. They want to scare you. They want to intimidate you. They want you to be the one who's feeling nervous and scared all the time. Okay. Why do they do that? Because they get narcissistic supply from it, right? So the first thing that you can do is, number one, not be intimidated by their behavior. Not be intimidated by their behavior. You know why? Because they're actually way more afraid of you than you are of them. That's the not so secret. They're the scared little person inside, and they don't want you to know it. So the minute that you're not intimidated by their behavior, they're like, hey, what's going on here? Because there's certain types of people that the narcissist respects. And I want you to check out my video. This is the only kind of person that a narcissist respects. Check out that video and you will see what I'm talking about. So number one, don't be intimidated by their behavior, and you will start to see how things will shift. I know it's scary at first, but you will see. And closely related is number 2, start not giving in to their demands. When you start not giving into their demands, you're starting to shift the dynamic. You're starting to not be conditioned by them anymore. What happened was, at the beginning of the relationship, they started conditioning you. They started to say, hey, here's how things were. They started to do things. They started love bombing you. They came along. They were perfect. They were wonderful. Rockets were going off. Things were lining up. They were soulmates to you, whether it was a business relationship, whether it was a personal relationship, either way. I was in a business relationship with a narcissist. It was the same thing. Everything was wonderful. Everything was perfect. Everything was amazing. And then they start devaluing you. Then they start doing things, whether it's a covert narcissist, whether it's a grandiose, it doesn't matter. They start doing these little things where you go, oh, what's going on? That's when they're starting to condition you. That's when they start going, oh, let's see how they do. Let's see what happens here, right? And when you start not giving into those demands, you're conditioning them back. That's when you start pivoting. That's when you start shifting that dynamic around. Don't give into their demands. Number 3 is start putting boundaries into place. When you start putting those boundaries into place, again, you're starting to turn that ship around so that now you're starting to point the guns at them instead of having the guns be pointed at you. And I have a whole video called 5 Ways to Set Boundaries with Narcissists. You definitely want to check that out if you want to know how to set boundaries with narcissists. All right. I want you to put in the comments right now, not giving in, because that's what you're going to do right now. You are not giving in, right? You are changing how things are going to be. From now on, there's a new game in town. Another thing that you do with them is, this is number 4, you're going to focus on the facts. When you focus on the facts, they can't take that, especially when they're trying to gaslight you all the time. When they're constantly trying to go, this is what happened. No, this is what happened. And you go, I saw it with my own eyes. I heard it with my own ears. I know what happened. This is what happened. And you don't get emotional. And this is actually number 5, withhold emotional reactions. Emotional regulation is key. You focus, number 4, focus on the facts. Number 5, do not get emotional. Don't allow yourself to be triggered. When you do that, you seriously start to scare them out of your life because you are no longer allowing yourself to be triggered by them. And when you do that, that's when you're cutting off that supply source to them. And that's when you're really going to scare them out of your life. Because the bottom line is that food, that oxygen, that supply source, when that main line is still running toward them, that's when they're still going to be coming at you. That's when they still want you. And as long as they're getting some food source, that some oxygen, some supply source from you, they're still going to come around. If you're still intimidated, you're still fearful, you're still giving in, you're still allowing, that's giving them some reason to come around. Okay. And especially if you have an emotional reaction, that emotional reaction gives them supply. It also gives them fodder for things that they can use against you, especially if you have some kind of a legal case going on with them. They will use that against you. They will say, look, there's the crazy one. There's the one. While they sit over there all cool and calm and collected. They use that in text. They use that in emails. They use witnesses against you. Don't allow it. Okay? Go scream in your pillow, go cry in the shower, go talk to your therapist. You know, we actually have a partnership with betterhelp.com. Go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung. If you need help and support, we do receive commissions from that, but we only recommend services that we trust. Whatever you need to do to not have an emotional reaction, do that. Okay? That's number 5. Number 6 is cut them off. Cut them off. Cut off that supply source completely if you can. And then don't allow it back if you can. Or if you have to have one form of communication, have it be email or some other way that you can track the time and date stamp. You know, if you have children, then the apps are good, you know, the ones that you can track. Because you want a record of everything. You want something that you can track because they will use it against you. They will manipulate things. 100% they will. anything you say or do will be used against you. And this is really, really, really one of the most important things that you can do when you are dealing with a narcissist, either in your personal life, in your business life, or when you are negotiating with a narcissist. Is such a really, really great tool that you will have in your toolbox. And I actually say that you can use this either as, in a way, sort of a weapon or as a shield. Because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you definitely need both. And you can use this right away and in any time when you're communicating with a narcissist. It means, in a way, is like you literally become like a boulder. In a way, it's more like a boulder than a rock, but you can kind of think of it as gray rock. So you become devoid of emotion. You become immovable. Just think of yourself as kind of a gray rock. What does a gray rock do? What does a gray boulder do? It just sits there. It doesn't get triggered. It doesn't move. It just literally sits there. I mean, I remember doing this when I was dealing with a couple of narcissists in my life, and I didn't know the term gray rock at the time. I just kind of instinctively knew to do this. It's kind of like I knew, don't give them the satisfaction. You know that they're trying to get under your skin. You know that they want to get some kind of rise out of you. You just don't give it to them, because what happens is they get narcissistic supply out of that. They love to see you go crazy. They love to see you get triggered. You just have to do whatever you can not to allow yourself to show that. And that's why you really need to have those boundaries. That's why you really need to keep your interactions as brief as possible, because you know that you're going to get triggered, especially if you've had a longer term relationship with them. They know how to push your buttons. They just know exactly what to do to push those buttons. So you just try to be steadfast. You try to be indifferent. So here are some good examples. They text you. They text you something where they want some big dramatic response out of you. Just write back K, just like the one letter, just the letter K, or KK, something like that. You know, like my teenage daughter will respond like that sometimes. I mean, she's not trying to be like gray rock to me. She'll just do that to be cute sometimes, but you can just do that. Or you can just say, okay, if that's what you want or whatever. I mean, you know, just make it clear, like, I'm not affected by you. I am so not affected by you. I mean, I remember one time there was somebody in my family who was like really trying to get, you know, some emotional response going on. You know, you just like put it back on them, like, oh geez, you know, I'm sure traveling is really stressful or something like that. Like, you just like put it on them, like, I'm sure you're really stressed out right now. You know, you don't even like take it personally at all. Like, I'm sure you're really stressed out right now. I'm sure you must be going through a really tough time. You don't even make it seem like whatever they're saying about you has anything to do with you at all. Because a lot of times, not only do they get narcissistic supply from it, they're also trying to get you to do something that they can then use against you for custody, use against you in court to make it look like you're crazy, something like that. So, you know, don't give that to them, because then they'll be able to show the judge or the mediator, see, I told you that person is unbalanced or bipolar or whatever it is that they're trying to say about you, right? So you got to be really, really careful about that, because there it is in black and white. You know, you just give them that one time, or worse, they use it against you for a potential restraining order. I've seen that happen before. I mean, just that one time that you throw that one thing, or you slam that door, or you yell, and now the cops are showing up at your house and you're suddenly getting arrested for domestic violence. And there it is. You don't want to have that happen. You got to stay in control of your emotions. You got to be that gray rock. right? And especially because, if they show up at your kid's soccer game with that new form of supply or whatever, and they want you to say something so bad, you just say, oh, hello to their new person. How are you? So nice to meet you. You just smile. Don't say a word. Don't say a word. Nothing other than that, because that is what they want. They want so much to get under your skin, so much. Think about Ted Lasso, right? I don't know if you guys watch that show, but I actually have a video, by the way, on the narcissistic characters in Ted Lasso, which you could definitely check out if you'd like. But there's actually a scene in that show where Rebecca's ex-husband comes in and he wants to just tell her about how he has gotten his new girlfriend pregnant. And you could tell that she's bothered by the fact that he did that. And he says, oh, I guess I had to, find the right person or something like that. And, it just so gets under her skin. She just doesn't want to let on. Just don't let on. That's the right thing to do, because that is exactly what they want. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't let them see you sweat. So I want you to put that in the comments right now. Don't let them see you sweat, because that's what they want. Go scream in the shower, go cry in the shower, scream in your pillow, do whatever you need to do, but you are a gray rock in front of their face. That's what you have to do. I mean, you just, in front of their face, you just smile. Even when they're gaslighting you and they're saying things, like, we had that conversation and this is how it went. I want you to smile and say, oh, you just obviously aren't remembering correctly. Oh, you just must not remember, or we remember it differently. Just say it like that. We just remember it differently. And, we can agree to disagree. And that's it. And you can just smile and walk away. The rest of what you want to say can just be silent. Just fill in the blanks silently in your head. And you don't have to say it out loud. Karma never forgets. She's got a very long memory, and karma always comes back around, because what goes around comes around. My dad used to say, be careful what you throw up in the air, because it will come back down on your head. And it definitely does. You can just say, like, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's fine, just because we disagree, you don't have to be disagreeable. That's totally fine too. And you can fake it. I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. You don't have to be anything other than whole and complete. And you are planted firmly in your power. You know who you are. And this is you knowing who you are, right? And yeah, it can be exhausting. It can be draining. And that's why you keep those interactions as brief as possible. I mean, you really don't want to spend a whole lot of time around this person, because they do want to drain you. They do want to trigger you. They're constantly needling you. They're constantly trying to get some kind of reaction out of you, because that's what feeds them. That's their food. That's their lifeblood. That's their oxygen. If they don't get that, then they're going to try to, slither on down the road to get it from somebody else. It's their way. It's how they're built. And you're not going to change that. You're never going to change that. I recently had a conversation with Marissa Peer, who's one of the most renowned therapists in the world. She won't even counsel narcissists. She won't even take them in her practice. You know why? Because she knows she can't change them. Think about that. She knows that there's nothing she can do for them. She'll help the people who've been traumatized by them, because she knows that she can help them. She knows that she can do something for them, but she can't help the narcissist. You know why? Because they have no self-awareness. They can't be helped. They can't be saved. So if the therapist who does hypnotherapy, who literally trains thousands of therapists all over the world, cannot help them, you cannot help them. You can't do it. You literally do not have the tools to do it. So what can you do when you're around them? You can just go gray rock. You use that as your shield. You use that as your weapon. You say, okay, if that's what you want to think, sure, I agree with you. Great, whatever. You just give them nothing, because you know why? They get bored. They get bored with a gray rock eventually. They're not interested in the gray rock. They don't care about the gray rock anymore. They move on from the gray rock because they want supply. They're not getting it from something that's not giving them any kind of feedback. You know, my husband and I used to have somebody in our family who was, you know, like trying to get a rise out of somebody. And then as soon as the person would finally be upset, like angry, like on the verge of tears, this person would be like, oh, now we're having a conversation. All right, now we're getting going. This is good. What? Yeah, but that's, to that person, that's what that meant, because that person was finally getting fed. You don't want to be food for a narcissist. That's no fun. So just, you know, become a gray rock. Protect yourself, use that as your shield. You don't go to war without weapons. You don't get ahead in battle without weapons. You don't go to war without a shield to protect yourself, right? And when you're in battle with a narcissist, you need weapons. When you're dealing with a narcissist, it's either black or white. That's how they see things. You're either for them or you're against them. When you're in that discard phase, you are definitely against them because you become public enemy number one. So when it becomes time to say goodbye, they want to make sure that you go down before they go down. They want the whole world to see that you were wrong. This is when you see the birth of the smear campaign, right? So you got to have protection, and your protection will be that gray rock. Just become a gray rock. So no more supply, no supply for you, because you are no longer giving yourself to someone who doesn't deserve it.